Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And tonight, like I said, I wanted to do another video um, upon the rituals that I got planned for over the next year or so. Now, certain demons, certain beings and entities have power over the dead, chiromantic practices, um, necromancy, nigromancy, and the such. Okay. And they deal with a lot of different things, including herbalism, alchemy, and necromantic practices of ritualistic circles, blood sorcery, and many other things. So I thought I'd take a moment and kind of give you a backdrop of what I've been studying and getting ready to get into. Okay. Now, keep in mind that before you do any form of ritual, especially working with an entity or any given practice, you really need to do your homework and have a sound mind and understanding of the practices that you as the individual are getting ready to deploy. Okay? Now, I've been hitting the books quite heavily over the last year, not just the books, but also the internet, to the point where the practices that I've been getting into on necromancy, because I'm getting more and more into necromancy as time goes on because of the fact that as a traditional Satanist, I deal a lot with spirits. I deal with a lot of entities, such as the fallen angels, such as demonic entities. Okay. And not just them. I also deal with jinn, okay? The Ugan and the Loa. And you'd be surprised how many of these beings, including that of the pagan traditions, have lords of the dead, such as Baron Samedi and the Loa, okay? Lord of the dead, the realm of the dead. Whereas Papa Nabo in Hoodooism is associated with as the king of the dead, okay? And then you have the gods of the dead, such as the Egyptian Anubis, Incan, Supe, Hel, and the goddess of the dead in Norse mythology, Hecate, goddess of witchcraft, ghosts. Notice I said ghosts, meaning the dead, justice, the underworld, and most importantly, necromancy. Okay? And then you have Hades, Lord of the Dead. Okay? In Mesopotamian, you have Mephistopheles. Okay? Now, if you really want to get into Lords of Destruction, you got Set, the Lord of Storms and Chaos. You have Pazuzu, Lord of Locusts. Okay? Beelzebub or Beelzebul. Okay? The Lord of Flies. He is the Lord of Pestilence. So therefore, the dying and the dead go hand in hand with necromancy. Okay, and you'll see more and more as time goes by that these things apply to necromancy and nigromancy. Okay, now in the old days, about the late, mm, how should I say this? The late 14th century, the late Middle Ages, the late Dark Ages, the early Dark Ages and such. The definition nigromancy was associated with this practice. It was a type of chiromantic practice. Okay, the summoning, the conjuring of spirits. And then you had The definition itself is meaning the art of black magic or black divination. Okay. Whereas necromancy is the Greek definition, not the Latin. Okay. Nigromancy is the Latin definition. Okay. Necromancy is Greek, meaning corpse. Okay. The art of divination or rejuvenation compared to conjuration of a corpse. Okay. The dead, bringing a spirit to the corpse or ritually manifesting them within a circle of invocation or evocation type practices. Okay. And I found this very interesting because I started going into other traditions, other fields, such as the medical, and you see where herbalism and alchemy is played into the factor. Okay. Number one, alchemy is used to bring a basic substance down to its most basic component. Okay. Its most recognized basic component. Here, it can be restructured and recreated for a different purpose. We see this within the rejuvenation of corpses, within, say, for example, the medical field. We see it in herbalism, such as poisonings, making people sick, bringing them close to death so that they can commune with the spirits. We also see this with the formulation of three powders: black, which kills; amber, which makes sick; and white, which heals. Okay. And even when we get into necromancy being a mere Christian ideology, okay, that's right. It is a Christian indoctrinated viewpoint. It is a practice done in Islamic and Jewish traditions of Christianity. You don't believe me? Look it up. Okay. Now, here's the kicker. Peter Shore, spelled Shor, once classified that we should not go by the ancient terminology of nigromancy because of its racial slur or slang. Okay. Basically, in modern day, it would be considered a racial hate crime, like, you know, calling somebody a Negro. Okay. But unfortunately, this is a much older tradition. Okay. It has nothing to do with slavery. It has nothing to do with the hate crimes and racial things that we see today. Okay. Even during the slave trade, the term Negro was actually a form of black magic. It was associated with the black arts and spiritualism long before it became associated with the African American or African traditions of slavehood. Okay. But even if you get into historical accounts and you go all the way back into the Roman Empire, this definition of nigromancy was actually associated there as well. And what's interesting to note here is that there was actually an African um, emperor that was an emperor for quite a while. People with blonde hair was associated with slavery in that era. Okay, and I wanted to put this out there because of the fact that it goes hand in hand with these definitions and what I'm about to say. Okay, now here's the thing. The way he put it was we need to go with the more modern day terminology because of its much more cleaner background. Okay, and this is necromancy. And like I said, it's associated with the church, the Christian church, and Islamic magic. Okay. And what this is the thing that caught my attention through this, though. And I'm going to tell you this. is that even though it's associated with Christianity, we see how it became associated with the slave trade because most of these individuals were Christian. And a lot of times you see them through European traditions, not just going down into the French quarters and all that other stuff, going down through the Mediterranean seas and down into the Philippines to Cuba to Haiti, all the way to South America and all the way up into North America. Okay. Necromancy has been a long, long tradition standing. Okay. 2 centuries to be precise. That's 2 centuries that necromancy has been associated with the black magic. Okay. Now, the first time we see the definition of necromancy is found in the Grand Grim War. The Grand Grim War, in Red Dragon as well, not just there, but we also see it in the Magus, Volume 1. We see it in many grimoires as being from demons or angelics who rule over the dead, who rule necromancy and are teachers of the arts. And we also see this in the biblical sense of necromancers being stoned to death, that people should stay away from them due to the fact that they were seen as unclean. Going to India, necromancers and black art practitioners that work with the dead are also seen in full view as those that are like garbage men. Okay, those like grave diggers, morticians, medical field practitioners of funeral home directors. Okay, the embalming aspect of priesthood. Okay, we see this back in the ancient Egyptian mythology of the second and third dynasty. Okay, so it's not just modern usage that you got to be aware of. It's also that of the old definitions. Now, from what I gather, nigromancy is used all the way up through until roughly around the late 14th century, early 15th century. Okay, this is the late Middle Ages, if not the late Dark Ages, depending on how you view it. Because when we think late Dark Ages, we're talking about the Holy Wars, we're talking about the witchcraft persecutions, the witchcraft trials, we're talking about the Crusades, okay? The time when everything was of the devil. So in this era, the Crusades, the Holy Wars, this is seen as the not just the Dark Ages, but also the Middle Ages. And it was quite brutal, okay? You look at Nicholas Remy's book of demonolatry, or that of Reginald Scott, the book of discovery of witchcraft, and you'll see what I mean by this. Okay, it was brutal in what everything they found on these practitioners of witches and how they were associated with demonic folklore. Okay, but it doesn't just go there. We also see where it's tied into alchemia. Okay, the ancient terminology, going all the way back to the 6th century BCE. Okay, BC or BCE region. Okay, and what's interesting to note here is how it's closely resembling, as far as I can tell, from the 14th century. Okay, when the Witchcraft Act was put in place, the Melic Victorum, and goes all the way back to the 6th century. Okay, you're looking at least 8 centuries of just being closely tied to shamanism. Probably a little bit before that as well. But like I said, I've only gone back to about the 6th century so far throughout my studies. This is why art, history, and mythology plays such a huge part, not just in religious perspectives, but in a wide range of things. You get a much broader picture when you go into these things and delve into them. You know, in the Grimoire of Armadale, Zaniel is the teacher of witchcraft. Okay? Witchcraft is associated with Hecate, the goddess of necromancy, ghosts in the underworld. Okay? Whereas Circe would be the definition of the goddess of mysticism. Hell, the goddess of the dead. Okay? The realm of the dead. And we see where everything gets tied into biblical lore. Okay? But here's the kicker. When you go back into the book of Genesis, chapter 6, or even that of, say, the book of Leviticus, we see where Azazel and the Watcher Angels play a huge, huge influence in mankind. Okay? Now, there's been debate on who the serpent was, and I'm not going to get into that here. But if you go into the book of Enoch, we see where it's Azazel who taught mankind alchemy, how to forge weapons of destruction, how to forge different things, and taught women how to paint their faces. Now, what's ironic is even in Egyptian, Greek, Roman, not just this, but also in Asia, Southwest, Northwest, Eastern Asia, all the way up into India, even into Gaelic and Icelandic traditions, you're going to see what is known as the death mask. Okay, this type of mask goes all the way back into roughly about the 5th century. Okay, the 5th century. Now picture that painting your face. Okay, certain traditions like Palo Mayumbi, Santeria. Okay, dressing up in your relative, your dead relative's clothing is a sign of homage. It's a sign of respect to your ancestors. Because we all know that the African Caribbean traditions are hereditary family lines. This is a lineage, much like witchcraft, okay? Druidism. A lot of time, even in Strega, the Italian witchcraft, a lot of times you're going to be seeing the history of a family line. Even in occultism, you see the term through Aleister Crowley, the seventh son of the seventh son. Think about that for a minute. The seventh son of the seventh son. 7 archangels, 7 colors, 7 planets. Okay? And so forth. All of this stuff ties into necromantic rituals such as circles, bloodletting, or blood pacts. Okay? Blood practices. Okay? Blood sorcery. Circles, invocations, evocations, all of it plays a huge part in it. Now, I'm beginning to understand the more I go back in time beyond the 6th century that shamanism and necromancy may have been seen for a while as one and the same in comparison. But if you really look at both of these structures, these ideologies, the etymologies of these two traditions, you're going to see that they're not just hermits, but they don't really, if not rarely, get along with each other. Okay? They don't mix. This is why Satanists are always lone wolves. This is why necromancers are always solitary practitioners. Okay? It's got nothing to do with herd conformity. It's the fact that they either lived and reported directly to a king like they did in Africa, or they lived on just the outskirts of a village, if not out into the wilderness, like you see in Greek, European, Slavic, Balk, or even the Welsh traditions, Icelandic, okay, where they lived way out into the boonies, away from civilization. Even in biblical accounts, we know that the 40-year war of the Israelites against the Philistines, the land of giants. King Saul sent out his men to find the strongest seer. Now, what is a seer but a medium, a spiritual communer, a diviner? Okay? In diviner, chiromancy practices are closely resembling and ties into necromancy and nigromancy practices. Okay? Keep that in mind because you're going to see this too. So you hear the term Witch of Endor. Witch of Endor. Christian Day speaks about her in his book, The Witch's Book of the Dead. Okay? In the biblical, the Kings, the book of Kings in the Bible speaks about her, where he goes to her underneath the cloak of night. This is King Saul, the leader of the Israelite people. Okay? Goes under the cloak of night to the Witch of Endor, and she calls him out on his bullshit. Why are you trying to ensnare me? Now think about this for a minute. The witchcraft law of what was going on then. The Turks were actually a force to be reckoned with. Not many people or countries could go toe to toe with them. In fact, I can only think two. Just two countries back then, Romania and Israelites. Interesting, the Canaanites, as they were called. But a lot of people forget that before that, they were known as the Chaldeans. Modern Beirut was their capital. Sits right on a ley line, which goes all the way over here to North America and through Britain, specifically the two Stonehenges. Okay? Salem, New Hampshire, and the one in England. Ends in two locations. Okay? But it doesn't just stop there, it goes a lot further. And I can tell you that even their Savior, Jesus Christ, also was a necromancer. Brought Lazarus back from the dead. The Shantorian's daughter brought her back from the dead. This is necromancy in the Bible. Okay? It is connected worldwide. Worldwide. Which is why you can't stick to just one region or one topic. You have to go into all of them. Okay? You look at the medical field. What if I told you that the medical field has been working with corpses such as necromancy since the early 16th century? I'm talking frozen water, electrocution. Okay? Look at the Fußbach. Okay? And work your way to present times. You're going to see this. What do we have now? That little thing that they put on you, rub together, defibrillator. Where do you think they got that from? Where do they get herbalism from? Alchemy. That's right. The medical professionals that we go to on a daily basis, guess what? They're not only alchemists, they're not just herbalism, they're necromancers. They deal with life and death, blood sorcery, the whole kit and caboodle, just like a shaman, just like a necromancer. Do your research. You will see this. Exactly, Ethan. There's another individual that discussed this. But personally, the best classification that I found between nigromancy and necromancy came from Peter Shaw. Okay, but it wasn't just him. There was other people that had different opinions on the two definitions. One was black magic utilizing a corpse, rejuvenation. The other one was spiritual conjuration. Put them together, you have black magic. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there real fast and to show you what I was getting into and how I'm preparing for the rituals that I'm getting ready to do. Earlier tonight, I started working with Astaroth. Okay. Like I said, working with Astaroth is the first of the 8 archdukes. Okay. The archprinces. Okay. The archdemons out of the demonic Bible before going into opening the 9 locks. Okay. And then I'll be getting into the 72 jinn. Okay. The jinn. They're actually also known as the goetic demons as well. They've been seen regurgitatedly wise through the grimoire tradition, so you really have to go back into the old world to see the what's truth and what's not. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this up, and I hope that you literally go into the old world and hit the books. Get into the sources that I mentioned, get into nigromancy, necromancy, and the likes. Go into the biblical and the Middle Eastern world, but also get into both art, history, and mythology. And I guarantee it, your eyes will be wide open. Now, from what I understand as well, is that through this, it goes back a lot further. And I'm eager to see how far back it goes, which is why I'm undergoing these rituals. Okay. So I hope this has been educational. I hope it's been intellectual. And you can always get in touch with me here or on Messenger. Okay. Facebook Messenger. I will reply and may take me a little bit because I also have a life outside of this stuff. So, and like work and family life and all that stuff. So, like most of us do. All right. But until next time, have a good night.